Hello students, let us discuss heat conduction through solids. Here I am showing a metal block which is in thermal equilibrium with the surrounding. That means it has some temperature which is equal to the temperature of the surroundings. Now we know that any object which possesses some temperature can be viewed as possessing some internal energy. That means the molecules in solid, they are not completely at rest. They have some energy, they will be oscillating about their mean positions. It is a very small amplitude, but to just make it clear, I am drawing it clearly. So this vibrational energy is what we refer to as internal energy. Now what happens if I change the temperature of the surroundings? On one side I am increasing the temperature and on the other side I have decreased the temperature. I have created two sides, one hotter and other colder. So whenever there is a temperature difference, we know that energy flows from higher temperature to lower temperature. So because this is at a higher temperature, now the energy flows from this side to the molecules which are closer to the hotter side. So they will gain the energy and their amplitude will increase. They have larger amplitudes now. Their vibrational energy has increased. The internal energy of this side is now slightly increased. But you see that the molecules which are in the middle of the block, they do not have much change in their energy. It takes some time for the heat to flow from one side to the other. So they still carry their older energy, which is a smaller value when compared to this. But let us look at molecules which are present here, closer to the colder side. Now because this side is colder and this is relatively hotter, some energy will now transfer from this portion to the surroundings, higher temperature to lower temperature. So what happens? The molecules will give away their energy, their amplitudes will decrease. So that is why for these molecules you can see the decrease in the amplitude, and for these molecules we can see the increase in the amplitude. So because they have different amplitudes, they have different energy, we should know that their temperatures are also different. So across the solid, now the temperature is of different value. I am showing it here with different sizes of capital T. The bigger T here represents larger temperature. Here the smaller T is colder temperature, and you can see that the temperature of the solid is different at different positions because they have different energies. This is what happens in a short while after making the changes. Here one important thing to note is not only the vibrational energy of molecules help this process, but also if there are free electrons in the solid, like in the case of metals, the free electrons also can move within the solid easily, and they will also help this process to carry the energy from one side to other side. So the energy flows at a faster rate. That is why metals which have free electrons, they are good conductors of heat as well, not only current, but the movement of free electrons helps the heat conduction also. That is why metals are good conductors of heat. So this is how heat conduction takes place. Now after a short while, if you give it some time, we will observe steady state. What does steady state mean? Let us look at this figure. Now the energy continuously flows from one side to the other side. If you keep the temperature of this side a higher value and this a lower value constantly, if you could maintain constant temperature here, a higher temperature and a lower temperature, now heat continuously flows from this side to this side through the solid. We assume that in this surface area, through this surface area, no heat escapes to surroundings. All the heat flows through the solid and goes to the other side. That is an important assumption. That means these sides are heat insulators. We can assume that. So all the heat flows from this side to this side through the area of cross section, which is shown here using the shaded portion. And this arrow mark is the direction of heat flow. Now what is steady state? So whenever we say that the process is in steady state, that means the heat flow at any given cross section is not changing with time. It remains constant. That means as soon as the temperatures are changed, at different cross sections you can see different rates of heat flow just instantaneously after a short while. But when it goes to steady state, you will observe at any given cross section, whatever the heat flows from this side to this side, say let us say 3 joules per second. Now that value will remain constant with time, it does not change. So that is what I have written here. In steady state, energy flow at a given cross section remains unchanged with time. Now that you call as a steady state. Once it has reached to steady state, now we can use the law of thermal conduction. Let us look at the temperature graph here. Here the x-axis is the position along the length of the slab, and on y-axis I have taken temperature. We can see that this side is at a higher temperature and the other side is at a lower temperature Tc. So we see a gradual decrease in temperature as you move from one side to the other side. So can we calculate the gradient here, slope delta T by delta x, which is Tc minus Th by L. Now the law says that, law of thermal conduction, the heat flow, the rate of heat flow, I am writing it as H, the rate of heat flow. H is not the energy, but it is rate at which energy is transferred. So that rate is proportional to the negative temperature gradient. That means negative of delta T by delta x, that is Th minus Tc by L. Negative temperature gradient means fall in temperature per unit distance. The temperature falls in this direction and that is the direction in which heat flow occurs. So heat is proportional to negative temperature gradient. Also we can observe that the rate at which heat flows is proportional to area of cross section. So we can write the equation as H equals now K into A into Th minus Tc by L, where K is a proportionality constant. We call it as coefficient of thermal conductivity. So one important thing to note here is it is proportional to the negative temperature gradient and it is proportional to the area, and you can apply this law only when the system is in steady state. You have to change the temperatures and you have to give it some time so that it comes to steady state, and then you can calculate the rate at which heat is flowing using this equation. So this is called Fourier's law of thermal conduction, and K is coefficient of thermal conductivity. Okay, let us see how we use this law. I am showing 3 figures here. Let us discuss how we use this equation. Now few important things here are, whenever you use this law, you have to remember it must be, the system must be in steady state, and also the few things you need to identify is, first one, the direction of heat flow, and the second one, the area of cross section. So let us do a small exercise here. Here I am showing a solid cylinder which has different temperatures across its ends, Th and Tc. Now what will be the direction of heat flow from higher side to colder side? So first visualize this. So the heat energy is flowing in this direction. Now to that direction, whatever the area is perpendicular to it, it is crossing this area. So that is the area of cross section we need to use in the equation. So let us substitute in the equation now. What will be the area? It will be pi r square, and the temperature difference is Th minus Tc. This term is the temperature gradient, the negative temperature gradient. So Th minus Tc by the length. This is the dimension in which the heat is flowing. So you have to take the length of that particular dimension in which the heat is flowing. So that is L here. So this is how you have to substitute for the terms area and temperature gradient correctly. Otherwise, you may make a mistake here. Please take a note of this. You always first identify the heat flow and then identify the area of cross section. So let's do the same thing here. Now the rate of heat flow here will be given by K into area into temperature gradient. What is the temperature gradient here? Here the bottom surface is at higher temperature and the top surface is at a lower temperature. So the heat will flow in which direction? From bottom to top. So you can mark these arrows. You should visualize it once you see a problem like this. The heat is flowing from bottom surface to the top surface, from higher temperature to the lower temperature. So now the area of cross section would be any area which is in the horizontal plane. So I'll mark this region. The heat is now crossing this area of cross section. So what will be the area of this? Side into side. So area will be length into breadth here. This is LB. You should not take BH. You should not take LH. The area will be L into B here. And the temperature gradient is Th minus Tc by the distance. It's not L. See, the heat is crossing a distance of h here from bottom to top. So this will be our dimension for the direction of heat flow. So the temperature gradient is, the negative temperature gradient is Th minus Tc by h. Let's see the case for thick hollow cylinder. The inner portion is empty, that is hollow, whichever is less than r1. Its outer surface has a radius r2. Now the material is present only in this portion, the cylindrical portion. The inner portion is hollow. So the heat will flow only where the material is present, in this region. Here there is no material, so the conduction is not possible. So this heat is now crossing which area? It is not pi r2 square. It is not pi r2 square. It is not pi r1 square. It is only crossing that area which is pi r2 square minus pi r1 square. So this is correct. So let's write the equation. H is K, area of cross section will be pi r2 square minus r1 square, and the temperature gradient is Th minus Tc by the distance. Let's take it as L. So the heat is now crossing a distance of L. So that will be our equation. Please keep these things in mind. They are very important. You should not make any mistake while taking the area of cross section. And you can do that very well if you can visualize the area or the region where the heat is flowing and where it is not flowing. Let us look at the concept of thermal resistance now. We can compare it with Ohm's law. Here we have the conductor which is carrying the energy from one side to other side. I am showing a wire, an electric wire, which has a resistance R and it has a different potentials on either sides, higher potential and a lower potential. What do we find here? A current flows. The current here I is now equivalent to the rate of energy flow here, H. So, we are comparing the thing which is flowing here. Here it is the charge per unit time, here it is the energy per unit time. Now, our law gives you this equation H equals K Th minus Tc by L. Now, if you rearrange it, now the temperature drop, the fall in temperature Th minus Tc can be given by H into L by Ka, goes to the other side L by K. Now, when you compare this equation with the Ohm's law we have here, V equals IR, the potential drop Vh minus VL is equal to IR. So, this term L by Ka can be seen as a resistance that we call as thermal resistance. It is this physical quantity that has some obstruction, that is causing some obstruction to the heat flow. If this value is larger, we will find that for a given temperature difference, the rate at energy flows will be lesser. If the resistance is smaller, the heat will easily flow. More heat flows per unit time if this is smaller. So, if the thermal resistance is more, heat flowing per unit time will be less. So, for the given temperature difference, think now if more energy flow should occur per unit time, if that is the condition, should you take more area of cross section or less area of cross section? More energy should flow per unit time, so H should be larger, that means R should be smaller. So, to make this entire quantity smaller, you have to take larger area. So, if you take a larger area, we see that the obstruction is lesser now. The thermal resistance it offers is less and more energy will flow per unit time. So, this is how you should understand thermal resistance. Now, let us see if there are several conductors that are given in a problem. We can calculate their effective thermal resistance or effective thermal conductivity. It is a useful technique. So, let us discuss about that. We need to recall about series connections and parallel connections. So, I am comparing it with current electricity which we have already studied. So, let us recall how we understand series connection. In series connection, one resistor is connected to another resistance in series like this. One important thing to note here is the same current flows. So, let us look at a traffic example. If there are two roads and they are connected in series, you will see that the traffic which is flowing, the traffic which is going in one road must pass through the other road also. It is the same traffic that flows. So, it is the same current that flows here. But in parallel connection, if they are connected in parallel, now we see that the current splits at a junction and then rejoins at another junction after crossing these resistances. The current splits here, I1 and I2 may be different, they depend on the resistances. So, in our traffic example, the cars which come here, they may take any direction, road 1 or road 2, they will split here and they will rejoin here. So, such a connection will be parallel connection. You should be able to identify clearly what a series connection is or what a parallel connection is in the given problem. That is very important. So, note these points. If you see the current splitting and joining, so they are in parallel. If same current flows, they are in series. Now we know these derivations by calculating the potential difference across the different resistances. Here Vx minus Vq can be written as IR1 and Vq minus Vy can be written as IR2. And now you want to reduce this entire system to one single resistor, which is R effective. So that is how we reduce the system. We want to calculate one effective resistor which behaves like the original system. That means which allows the same current for the same potential difference. So the Vx minus Vy will be the same as in earlier case and the same current must flow. Now to do that, what kind of resistance you have to pick? R effective. Now if we write the equation for this case, Vx minus Vy will be I into R effective. So adding these two equations, we can calculate that R effective is R1 plus R2. We know this value, we know this result. In series, R effective will be R1 plus R2. Let's look at parallel connection. What happens here? Now you want to reduce this system of resistances to one effective resistance, R effective. The current splits as I1 and I2. If you write the equations, Vx minus Vy, the potential drop can be given as I1 R1, or the same potential drop can be written as I2 R2. So I have reduced this system to one effective resistance here, which has the same ends X and Y at the same potential, and now this system draws the same current as the original system. The total current I1 plus I2, which is going here, I, is same for this system also. So it is acting like the original system. So equation will be Vx minus Vy equals I into R effective now. So by comparing these equations, you know I is I1 plus I2, I is splitting here as I1 and I2. So taking I from this equation and I1 and I2 from these two equations, we can calculate that the equation we get here is 1 by R effective equals 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. We know this result as well. So we will use these results in calculating the effective thermal resistance. So let us discuss about system of heat conductors. How do we calculate effective thermal resistance or thermal conductivity in the case of two resistors, two thermal conductors? So we know in series we get R effective is equal to R1 plus R2, in parallel 1 by R effective is 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. We will use them, we will apply the result in this case. And one thing you need to remember is our thermal resistance is L by Ka. So here I have series connection. This is one conductor and this is another conductor. The temperature difference is Th and Tc. Let the temperature at the junction be T dash. So by using the same Ohm's law, you can write the temperature difference as I into R equivalently. So for the first conductor, you know they are in series connection, so the current will be the same thing. You have to note it here. You have to note it first. The current will be the same, H will be the same. So Th minus T dash is H into its resistance L by Ka, and T dash minus Tc, the temperature drop across this conductor, is current, heat current, H into the resistance L2 by K2A. Note here they have different thermal conductivities also, K1 and K2 are different. So our idea is to reduce this system of conductors to one system. This is a very important point here. Now if you want to calculate the effective thermal resistance for such a system, you need to reduce the entire system to one object which has the same dimensions as the original object. The effective conductor has same dimensions as the entire system of conductors. So what is the area of cross section here? A. The area of cross section of our effective system must also be A, capital A. And the total length of this system is L1 plus L2. So we need to take an effective conductor which has the length L1 plus L2. So you want to calculate the K effective for such a system. So, if such a system is behaving like our original system of conductors, it is carrying the same heat per unit time H. Now, how can you write the equation Th minus Tc as I into R effective. So, this is the effective length L1 plus L2 by K effective into area effective, but area is same here. We have same area for these two conductors, and so the same area for the resultant conductor also. From this we get K effective. By simplifying the equations, you can get the K effective, effective thermal conductivity of these two conductors as a system, as one system. Okay, let us discuss about parallel connection now. How do you identify whether the system of conductors are in parallel or not? You should observe 2 points where the energy flow, the heat flow per unit time splits, the heat splits here. That means it has two different paths. It can go through this solid or it can go through this solid. There are two independent paths and they both carry the heat to one side. There is one point here. So, both of them are carrying energy from one point and taking it to another side and giving the energy to another point there. So, there are two independent paths here and they are contributing parallelly for the energy flow. So, that is a parallel connection. Now, the heats H1 and H2 will be different. They may carry different heat per unit time. So, if you want to reduce this system of conductors to an effective system, remember again the effective conductor should have the same dimensions as the entire system. Now, its length, the length of these two conductors are L here. So, the effective length must also be L, and also this dimension, the area which is carrying the heat, the area of cross section is A1 plus A2. So, our effective conductor must possess an area of cross section A1 plus A2. So, now it has the same dimensions. Now, you will apply the equation 1 by R effective equals 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2, because they are in parallel connection, you can use that. And note here, what will be the R effective? It is L by Ka, and K we will replace with K effective, and area is A1 plus A2. So, 1 by R effective, for R effective I am substituting L by Ka, where A is A1 plus A2 and K is K effective. That is what we have to calculate, and L is the same thing. Similarly, for R1 and R2 we have to substitute L by K and L by Ka for those system of conductors. That means they have the same length L, but they may have different thermal conductivities. Here they are K1 and K2. So, L by K1 A1 will be the resistance, thermal resistance for first object, and L by K2 A2 will be thermal resistance for the second object. So, if you substitute them and find the effective value, you will find it to be K effective as K1 A1 plus K2 A2 by K1 plus K2. So, this is how you have to calculate effective thermal conductivity. One important point is, first reduce the conductors to a simpler system, one conductor which has the same dimensions as the original system, and first calculate effective resistance, and from that you can calculate effective thermal conductivity. By following these steps, you will avoid many mistakes. So, keep these things in mind, they are very, very important. You do not have to remember these final equations. The most important thing is how you are substituting the thermal resistance values properly in the equation. R effective R1 plus R2 and 1 by R effective 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. You have to substitute the values for R1, R2 properly, and remember it is always L by Ka. By properly taking the length and K and area for the given conductor, you will avoid many mistakes. So, let us solve a problem where you need to calculate effective thermal conductivity. This is a previous JEE mains question. It is given in 2019 January. Let us read the question. A cylinder of radius capital R is surrounded by a cylindrical shell of inner radius R and outer radius 2R. Now, as you read the question, you must try to draw the figure. So, I will do that. A cylinder of radius R, I will take a cylinder with radius R and now is surrounded by a cylindrical shell of inner radius R and outer radius 2R. The shell which is surrounding this has an inner radius R, that means it will be touching this touching the outer surface of the inner cylinder. So, now you need to take a shell which is surrounding it and its radius is 2R. Let's complete the figure. You should try to visualize the system quickly. Now, they might have different materials. This is a cylinder and this is a shell. They have different materials, so they may have different thermal conductivities. See, the question is carrying the information now. What idea I got is actually given in the question now. Their thermal conductivities are K1 and K2. Yes, they are different, maybe different, so they are given as different values here. Assuming no heat loss, the effective thermal conductivity of the system for heat flowing along the length of the cylinder is. Now, you will understand this part of the question if you have the figure with you. Assuming no loss of heat, why would he say that? Remember, I told you if the temperature is different on these two sides, the heat flows here, and also we have to assume one important thing, that no heat is lost to surroundings through this surface area, so that we will be able to use the law of thermal conduction here. So, that is why he is mentioning this point, assuming no loss of heat. Now, we have to calculate the effective thermal conductivity of such system if it carries the heat along the length of the cylinder. Now, there is no information about the temperature difference, nothing. He is just giving you a hint that the heat is flowing along the length of the cylinder. That means in this direction. So, let us assume that this is at a higher temperature and this is at a lower temperature. Now, heat will flow along the length of the cylinder and let the length be capital L. Now, for such a system, how do you calculate effective thermal conductivity? First, you need to calculate effective thermal resistance. So, identify if they are in series or parallel. Now, if heat flows from this side to the other side, identify does it have different independent paths here. The heat can go in the inner region and the heat can go along the length of the shell also. So, they are different paths. Let us say the heat flowing through the inner portion is H1 and through the outer portion is H2. Now, they are in parallel. We observe the splitting of energy flow here. They have different paths, so they are in parallel. Now, how do you calculate effective thermal resistance? You can use this relation 1 by R effective is 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. Now, the important thing is what we substitute for these values R1 and R2. First, make a note of it. R1 is the thermal resistance of the inner cylinder, which is L by Ka. L is same L by K is its thermal conductivity K1 and its area is pi R square. And what is R2 here? It is the thermal resistance offered by the shell. It is carrying heat only along this area, which I am going to shade it now. So, can you identify this area? And that will be the area of cross section for the shell. You should not include pi R square, which is the interior. So, length will be L and K is its thermal conductivity K2 and area will be the whole area pi 2R whole square minus the pi R square inner area. If you subtract it, you will get the answer. So, pi 2R square minus pi r square. So, R2 is L by K2 3 pi r square. Now, let us substitute here. We have reduced this entire system into one conductor now, for which we are calculating effective thermal resistance. Now, remember that should have the same dimensions as the original system. So, that means it should carry the energy for a length L. Let us draw that figure also. So, you should view your effective system as having length L and having an area which is the total area here, that is pi 2 r square. Outer radius is 2 r and it is carrying heat H, which is H1 plus H2. Now, we will substitute for the resistance values. So, R effective 1 by R effective will be, okay, let us make a note of R effective also now, so that we will make no mistake. R effective will be L by Ka, and L is the same length L, same dimensions. K is our K effective and A is pi 4 pi r square. Now, substitute 1 by R effective is inverse of this. So, that is K effective into 4 pi r square by L equals to 1 by R1 is K1 into pi r square by L plus this is K2 into 3 pi r square by L. Now, if you simplify this, we will have K effective as L cancels everywhere, you can cancel out pi r square also. So, this is K1 plus 3K2 by 4, that is the answer. So, the important things here are identify whether they are in series or parallel clearly and make a note of resistance values before substituting them in the final equation, and calculate the R effective properly and write the R effective value also by using the same dimensions as the entire system of the conductors. So, let us solve another problem now. This question is also a previous JEE question given in JEE Mains 2019 April. So, let us read this question. Two materials having coefficients of thermal conductivity 3K and K and thickness D and 3D respectively are joined to form a slab as shown. The figure is given. The temperatures of the outer surfaces are theta 2 and theta 1, theta 2 being higher than theta 1. The temperature of the interface is. So, understand the question, what is the interface here? So, they are joining at this junction, so this would be the interface. We want to calculate the temperature at this, let us call it theta dash. Now, temperature on one side is theta 2 and here it is theta 1. This is higher, so heat flows in this direction towards theta 1. Now, how do we calculate theta dash? Let us visualize the heat flow first. So, heat flows in this direction, let us call it H. Now, are they in series or parallel? They are in series, because whatever the energy that is flowing in this conductor will also flow through this conductor too, and then it will go to the other side. So, the same heat flows here, so they are in series. Now, viewing this system as a system of resistances like we did in earlier case, they are in series. Now, they are having the same current H. How do you write current as? It is temperature drop by resistance, just like potential drop by resistance. Now, we can write it as temperature drop theta 2 minus theta 1 by the resistance for this conductor. I am talking about only this conductor, the first one. The temperature difference is theta 2 minus theta 1, the temperature drop. and by its resistance. Let's say they have same area of cross section A. So, resistance will be L by L here is small d. So, L by Ka. K is 3K and area let it be capital F. So, this is the heat energy flow per unit time which is present in the conductor 1, temperature drop by the resistance, and it is the same for this conductor also, same heat per unit time is flowing. So, you can write the temperature drop theta dash minus theta 1, higher minus lower, by its resistance is its length 3d by K is K into area. So, now we can calculate theta dash from this equation. Let us simplify this. We take to the numerator, then 9 theta 2 theta dash equals theta dash minus theta 1, d by K cancels off. So, from this 10 theta dash is 9 theta 2 plus theta 1. So, theta dash is 9 theta 2 plus theta 1 by 10. So, this will be the temperature at the interface, and this will be smaller than theta 2 and larger than theta 1. You should see the temperature drops continuously in the direction of heat flow. So, you may take a note of it. In this problem, this must be true. Theta dash lies between theta 2 and theta 1, and theta dash is 9 theta 2 plus theta 1 by 10. That is the answer for this problem.